You're listening to The Outcue, a 21 News journalist perspective on a top news story.
Good morning. It is Thursday, June 5th, 2025. I am Assistant News Director Justin Mitchell, and this is The Outcue. And as we've done occasionally in the past, we're going to do something a little bit different with this edition of the Outcue. Usually, we take you behind a specific story or type of story and what it took to get it on the air. But there's other things that take a lot of work to get on the air, which is like whole broadcasts. And there are people who work on those broadcasts that you never hear about. You don't know what exactly they do, and yet they're running around crazy all day, especially when their assistant news director tells them that they have to drop everything to come up here and be a guest on the Outcue, like I did today for Brandon Brown, who is our 5 p.m. producer. Brandon, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
Yeah, see, he says that because he had no choice. So Brandon, I really just want to give the viewers an insight into what really goes behind the scenes into that hour they see every day, which looks pretty seamless, but you know, every word has to be written, every interview has to be booked, every question has to be written. So I guess we can start by just tell us about yourself and where you come from and how long you've been here.
Yeah, I'm from the Valley, originally from Hubbard. I live in Struthers now. I started at WFMJ in 2019 as an intern while I was going to school at YSU for journalism and telecommunications. So started as an intern for a few months. I think I was hired in May of 2020, right during COVID. So as we all know, crazy time in the newsroom, and I just stuck around from there, producing different shows from the 11 o'clock evening news until rotated in on the 6 a little bit, and then finally, when did the 5 start? In 2020?
It was September 5th of 2022.
2022 was the first 5 o'clock news, and I was selected to produce that, and been doing that ever since.
And it's pretty, I mean, it is fairly remarkable because a newsroom is one of these places where a lot of people do sort of come and go. So you're the original producer on the 5 o'clock news.
Yes, original producer.
3 years in, you know, that's, you've seen it grow, you've overseen a lot of things. So let's talk about what a typical day is and everything that goes into getting this on the air every day.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so the initial crux of the 5 o'clock newscast was, if you're hearing about it, we're talking about it. I don't know if that sticks true anymore as to how I produce the show, but I like to get a good vibe, obviously, from all of the local news that you want to keep it local, but also how to work in the national stuff that is grabbing people's attention, which we have more time on the 5. Obviously, we can play a little more with that. And then obviously our interview segments, which we try to at least do 3 to 4 longer form interview segments a day. So it's a lot of content to keep track of. Usually that involves, coming in, seeing what's in the daily planner as far as what local news goes. And then I dig in probably for about an hour, 2 hours in the morning, just to kind of see what's going on in the world and trying to decide what probably is going to engage our audience the best and get people to keep watching that show.
And something that I have noticed, and I don't know if you ever really look at the analytics on YouTube for some of those interview segments, but it seems like the variety is really the key.
Yes.
Because like we mentioned, keeping it local, which is of course the mantra. But if there's a national topic that people are discussing all over the place that's not necessarily local, but it's important, those will do huge numbers. It's
right.
This is a show that's really developed its reputation as just sort of being a place you can go for whatever it is that interests you. So how do we keep the variety there?
Again, it's it kind of just it is what it evolves daily. I think sometimes we'll just have a story that we have a feeling will hit harder or get people to watch, or whether our anchor Lindsay really wants to talk about something, or sometimes there's stuff I really want to talk about, or basically just trying to see what
That's important too, because you mentioned, there's a lot of people that are involved in putting this on. You're producing it, so you're in the booth with it live. If there's breaking news, you've got to react to it, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the other thing is all the perspectives that go into this. Like you mentioned, if there's something Lindsay wants to talk about, and Lindsay being about my age and a mother, her daughter is much younger than my children are, though, so we've got different perspectives. So she might have an idea that I wouldn't think of. I might have an idea she wouldn't think of. Now you're younger than both of us and have a different perspective entirely. And then we also have right now Jennifer Balagish, who some of you may remember from her original stint here as a weekend anchor, who's doing some of the booking, and she's got yet another perspective from a different age group, for her children, those kinds of things. And Sheila Miller, our news director, who once again, different background. Hers is a little more similar to mine, a little bit of a different age group, but we're closer. And all of that has to come together because that's a cross section of the audience,
Right.
as best as we can. So now breaking news. You plan this whole day out. You come in. There's, you've got to not only book the interviews, but help write the questions.
Yes.
We're all doing that. You have to craft those questions carefully. It's not uncommon at all for somebody to say, hey, I wrote these. Can you look at them? Can we rewrite them? However, and then something happens between, say, 4 and 5. How do you handle that?
I could probably just say, most recently, we were talking about, I think it was something related to the Trump tariffs, and I don't know if this is a spoiler for anyone, but not all of the interviews are recorded on the day, sometimes hours before. They're not all live. We try to make it very hard look like they happen live. But all topical nonetheless. So something we had recorded earlier in the day talking about the Trump tariffs, and suddenly something got reversed. And we couldn't get that same person to come back on live. So it was a situation where we had to get rid of that full 4-minute interview, had to hurry up and find some other news because it's always happening. And again, trying to replace that with something that is going to, again, be relevant to the newscast, relevant to the audience, and how that's going to flow in the news of the day.
So do you have a thought in the back of your mind? Like, is there something sort of up your
There
sleeve?
usually is like a backup, maybe something that I initially didn't have time for, or, something can happen between 4 and 5 o'clock, whether that's a reporter that's coming in who, something's going on downtown, or some other local bit you can throw in there. It's a lot of flex, and you can play with a lot of it throughout the day. The show that I produce, that I put together, around noon is not ever really the show that goes on at 5. It's always changing.
And plus we have to keep variety in mind, not just of the stories and the interviews, but the 5 o'clock runs right into the 6 o'clock news, and there is no reason to watch both if they're the same.
Right.
So they can't be the same.
Yes. That's another part we try to do, try to make the reporters that we have on the 5 o'clock news, their angle, trying to make it as different as we can from 6 o'clock, whether that's a piece of information that, they have at 5 that they're not going to have at 6, or trying to tease their story for 6 in a different way. It's kind of just and I try to think of different things to do daily, whether they're having them in the studio, having them live somewhere, things like that, just to keep the content
And if they've
fresh.
got pre-recorded interviews, it should not be the same soundbite that you'll hear. So, I mean, if somebody gave an interview, probably they had more to say than one sentence. So you got to go through all of that and then coordinate. So there's a lot of coordination involved. Taking it down to the basics here, because we're saying you produce the 5 as if viewers at home really know what that even means. So what is producing a newscast?
Producing is basically everything outside of maybe what a reporter would put together for a package, I would be responsible for. So that is writing all of the headlines that start the show, or organizing the structure of that newscast, as far as when we hit breaks and things like that, adding in all of the graphics, all of the supers, making sure that the reporters are in their place on time, making sure that the anchor is at the desk at the right time, making sure that Andrew's like weather forecast is good to go. I always check in with him to make sure that there's not a storm rolling in that I need to know about, and add someone in for coverage there. It's really, I'm the driver of the show, making sure that everything is in the right position, everything is written. I do write most of the, smaller VOs that are in the show.
That's voiceover.
Voiceover, yeah. Voiceovers, for those that don't know, that the anchor reads. Obviously Lindsay goes through the scripts and makes changes so that, it fits with the way that she speaks. But over the 3 years that we've been doing this, I kind of know how Lindsay talks at this point. So I can pretty much write pretty well to how Lindsay's going to say it. It's a lot of just managing different parts of this 1 hour.
That's an interesting thing you tapped into that we do automatically and don't even really think about it. But yeah, having to write for somebody else's voice
Yes.
is not something everybody deals with. Usually if you write at all, anything, you're hearing your own voice in your head.
Mhm.
If you do that, it will not work if
No.
somebody reads. So, I mean, is it just symbiosis? How do you?
I think so. Again, I think if you probably watched the show in its first year versus now, I think Lindsay has kind of adapted to the way that I write, and I have adapted to the way that Lindsay speaks. It's a lot of, I realize that, shorter sentences, are maybe better just for the way of getting the information across a little clearer. But again, like I wouldn't say I write the same maybe for Lindsay as I would if Derek were to fill in, because I know that Derek, delivers information not in a different way, but just in his own voice.
Right.
That I know, so it is weird.
It's even cadence. I mean, this is a computer system that times
Yes.
they call it a read rate. So we know with some reasonable accuracy how quickly and what cadence everybody here that would anchor a newscast reads with, and it's not all the same at all. And yet it's pretty accurate.
Right.
But so even timing the show, it has to fit in the right amount of time. The same amount of copy does not take up the same amount of time depending upon who's reading it.
Yes, Derek reads quicker than Lindsay, and that's I'm not saying that's bad about anybody. Some people just read faster. So if I produce with Lindsay, I do like to leave a little bit of pad at the end of the show, because she tends to ad-lib a little bit more with Andrew during weather or just on different stories. Lindsay will throw in different lines, as opposed to Derek, who I feel like sometimes just blows through the copy. And I'm like, whoa, Derek, we are under 2 minutes and the show's not over yet. So we're really trying to just remember whoever is anchoring, if Lindsay's ever not there, that I need to almost produce in a different way.
Yeah, well, and that you can tell when you're watching, particularly like you mentioned that Lindsay will throw in little ad libs here and there. And I know, at least to the trained ear, I know that was Lindsay as opposed to something that was written for her. Do you ever hear anybody, whether it be Lindsay or anybody else, do that where you're like, oh no, I didn't change the meaning or something like that?
I don't know if it ever changes the meaning, but it shows that even in this business where people might look at it and think that, everyone's reading directly off the script and it's directly what we write. The meaning behind the story really never changes, but everyone can deliver that in a different way.
And the other thing that the producer is responsible for that I don't think people think about is the overall look of the newscast. This is really planned down to wherever anybody's standing, whether they're out on a live shot somewhere or where the anchor's standing in the studio, or what image you're seeing on the screen next to their head, or any of that. You've got to put thought into all of that.
Yes, but I know sometimes Lindsay likes to move around the studio a little bit. It is a long hour show, so she specifically wants to be moved, usually around the 5:30 mark, to get out of the anchor desk. So, responsible for all of that, responsible for knowing that, for example, Sydney's going to be out front of City Hall and not down in front of the police station or the fire station, or just wherever reporters are standing, because you want the anchor and you want the show to flow very well. So you don't want Lindsay to toss to Sydney in the middle of the street versus, in front of the police station. So we need to know where everything,
Not to
where
mention
everything
that
is.
a lot of this stuff is coded a certain way where it could throw everything off.
yes.
One little mistake can spiral and it would fall on you on the
Yes.
high wire to figure out a way to
Yeah.
make the viewer not notice it.
The coding is also very particular because we work closely with the engineers upstairs who are responsible for making sure that I'm not really responsible for making sure that the camera is in the right position, but I'm responsible for telling them that it needs to be there. So,
So to wrap it up, because obviously this is something that could take all day, but so can producing the show, and I don't want to keep you away from it for too much longer. Favorite and least favorite thing about doing this?
my favorite thing about it is that every day is different, but the content is not the same every day. So there is an opportunity to do different setups, different looks. Just there's always a way to evolve the show and to make it interesting, at least for myself to produce. I guess the con about the show would truly be how much there is to keep track of. And some days, some days when it's slower, it's much easier. But then there's days where a building explodes in downtown Youngstown and you want to pull your hair out trying to make sure you know where everyone is and what's going on. So yeah, it's a lot to keep track of sometimes.
But the slow days are boring.
The slow days are kind of boring. Yeah, the slow days are a little boring.
Yeah, you don't want to work in news if you want the same thing all the
Right,
time. That's
exactly.
for sure. You got to be able to keep track of it. I always describe what I do, and it's similar to what you do, is throwing knives in the air and learning how to juggle before
Yep.
they fall.
Pretty much.
As always, if there's anything you think we should be looking into, if there's any topic you'd like us to be discussing on the Outcue, anything you've ever been curious about the news business, any stories that you think are not getting the attention that they deserve, really anything that you want to engage with this news organization about, we are the ones who will do that. And you can reach us at news@wfmj.com, watchdog@wfmj.com. You can call us at 330-744-8821. You can send us a message on Facebook. You can send us a message on Blue Sky. You can mail us letters, but there's a significant delay there, and then I can't copy and paste it into the planner, and the risk of losing it is far greater, so don't do that. Until next time, this has been the Outcue.